I'm so far behind. I apologize. Life has definitely taken its toll, but I'm gonna try to catch up to these weeks. I know you've gotten recaps from past weeks already, but might as well do it from my perspective. And I've been wanting to do this. So, week two, man. Week two. We start with week two, and it starts with the Thursday night game: Buffalo versus Miami. Definitely two teams coming in here 1-0. Miami, obviously, with Tua, they're trying to fly high. They're trying to get their AFC East division title journey on their way. The Bills, I mean, they're still getting written off. Obviously, a lot of losses to their team from free agency. So it was a lot of who's going to show out in this game. I mean, it's still a Bills Dolphins game. It's a division game. So, what did I see? Honestly, well, it was tough, man. It was tough to see Tua get injured, another concussion. It's rough, dude. It's rough seeing that for him. Is his career over? It's in jeopardy for sure. Depends on him if he wants it to be over and if he can recover. I think he definitely has taken a huge toll on his brain. So, personally, I'd probably retire, but at the same time, he's an NFL player and pride kicks in, stubbornness kicks in. I don't see him retiring from this, but he is one concussion away from. I feel like could be bad, man. So he's gonna have to protect himself. Something's gotta happen. I don't know. He's got to put the cap on, that cap the NFL players wear for their head. Um, I believe that is known to be a safer option, especially for head injuries. So again, we will see. It's sad to say that his career is in jeopardy, though. Cook, he was cooking. Definitely got him involved in the run game, pass game. James Cook was great this game. Josh Allen, he had that Josh Allen magic. Definitely, with people writing them off, I think Josh Allen's riding high and being like, no, we can still do this. And, he did his thing. Buffalo defense definitely impressed, especially with guys that, like I said, they're just trying to get better. They're just trying to defensively become a pretty good defense, a pretty good team. And with the key losses, I was expecting them to struggle, but they impressed this game definitely against a really good Miami offense. You look at the offense, Allen 13 for 19, 139 yards, one touchdown, zero interceptions. Tua was 17 for 25, 145 yards, a touchdown and three interceptions. Cook had 11 rushes for 78 yards and two touchdowns, a reception for 17 yards and a touchdown. A-Chain had 22 rushes for 96 yards, 7 receptions for 69 yards, and a touchdown. Oliver, 3 tackles, a sack, and 2 tackles for loss. Benford, 7 tackles, an interception, and a pass deflection. And a combination of Hamlin, Spector, and Williams, who had 10 tackles and a tackle for loss. It was fantastic. On the defensive side for the Dolphins, Long Jr. had 11 tackles and 2 tackles for loss. Bass was 1 for 2. Sanders was 1 for 1 for kicking. Impact wise, Cook, A-Chain, Buffalo defense, absolutely. Cook, I mean, he was a X factor of the game. Definitely a big reason why they got their points. A-Chain kept him in the game for a little bit, and then Buffalo defense was able to shut it down for Miami not to score more than 10 points, and that's impressive. So overall, I like it. I like this Thursday night game was definitely boring in a way, but at the same time, you know, Bills did what they had to do, and again, they dominate the Dolphins. Next game, we got the Seahawks and the Pats in New England. They're in Foxborough. Um, Definitely a game that was. I thought Seattle should have just dominated, but New England definitely played a pretty good chess match with them. So you got to give them some credit there. They had an entertaining first half in terms of defensive battles, some good drives in there. Honestly, Brissett and Gino looked really good. Do two guys that definitely played the good game management card and was able to have successful drives, make successful decisions. So you got to give him their credit. Both defenses, like I said, looked really good throughout the whole game. I think they played them really well. They both were aggressive. They both were uh, they had secure tackling in there. I mean, everything was great, honestly. So overall, really enjoyed that. And Seattle made some big stops. That's really the key of this game was that New England really could have won the game. Seattle just made some big key defensive stops, and it really helped them out at the end. Um, and also that OT drive, definitely believe that was methodical They had runs in there. They had some medium passes. They moved the ball well. They definitely picked apart that defense for New England, and they were able to, um, make sure they were in a good field position to win the game, field goal making that the game winner. So it was a great game if you're really into defense and a bit of some game management. Like I said, it was fun to watch. It looks like it was boring, but it was fun. Um, Offensive wise, Gino, he was 33 for 44 with 327 yards, one touchdown, no pick. Jacoby Brissett 15 for 27 with 149 yards, one touchdown and no pick. Um, Gibson, the running back, had 11 rushes for 96 yards. Ramondre Stevenson had 21 rushes for 81 yards and a touchdown. Metcalf had a great game, 10 receptions, 129 yards and a touchdown. And Jackson Smith and Njigba, 12 receptions for 117 yards. On the New England side, Hunter Henry, 8 receptions for 109 yards. He was the go-to man. Defensive wise, he had Boye Mafe, who had 5 tackles, a sack, and a tackle for loss. Williams had 4 tackles, 1.5 sacks, and 1 tackle for loss. Rookie Byron Murphy II had 4 tackles, a half a sack, and a tackle for loss. In terms of the New England defense, you had White, who had another good game, 7 tackles, 1.5 sack, and a tackle for loss. And Kyle Duggar, who had 9 tackles, a sack, and 3 tackles for loss. Kicking wise, Myers was 3 for 3. Sly was 2 for 3. Impact wise, Gino, I think just the way that he was able to, he had the edge over Brissett in terms of methodical drives and getting the ball down the field, even if it was not, uh, it was through the air. But I mean, the fact that he was able to have them successful medium short routes, really says a lot. So he was able to read the field and read the defense well. Metcalf and Njigba had a great games. I mean, great games. They stepped it up there, and both defenses need impact. Just they both were shutting themselves down. And definitely did not. It did not take um, an extraordinary amount of points in this game. 23-20 is pretty good. Defenses were on point for most of the day, so give them their credit as well. Great game. Seattle, New England, they're both 1-0. Obviously, one of them walked out 2-0. One of them walked out 1-1, and that was Seattle as 2-0. So, Washington Commanders, New York Giants in Washington D.C. Battle of the 0-1s, division rivals. Definitely, actually a pretty solid game. The Commanders were go on to win this one, 21-18. Honestly, takeaways from it: driving down the field for both teams was honestly they drove down with ease. Pass run don't matter. They really did move the ball really really well against these defenses, um, who definitely they're not top tier in terms of where they're at. They struggled, dude. They struggled mightily. Daniel Jones looked comfortable. He did look comfortable. This is a guy that gets criticized every week. It's a guy that gets called a bust, but he looked comfortable this week, so he's got to give him some credit there. Jaden Daniels, cool, calm, collective. He's looking like a really good pickup for the Commanders. It's a good upside for them. They haven't really had great news of QBs since RG3. Really, we can add in Kirk Cousins, but if we're looking at draft picks wise, this was definitely a great pick for him. You're looking at the offense. Daniel Jones, 16 for 28, 178 yards, 2 touchdowns, and no picks. Jaden Daniels, 23 for 29, 226 yards, um, with 10 rushes and 44 yards. He was sacked 5 times. Singletary, 16 rushes for 95 yards and a touchdown. Brian Robinson Jr., 17 rushes for 133 yards. Neighbors, 10 receptions for 127 yards and a touchdown. On the defensive side of the football, there was some guys. Okriki, 8 tackles, a sack, 2 tackles for loss. Pinnock, 9 tackles, 2 sacks, 2 tackles for loss. Phillips, 12 tackles, 1 sack, 2 tackles for loss. McFadden, 13 tackles, 1 sack, 1 tackle for loss. Bobby Wagner had 9 tackles for a tackle for loss and a pass deflection, and Frankie Luvu had 11 tackles. Kick return, Gray, he had 5 returns for 128 yards. That was fantastic. Kicking wise, Gillian, he went 0 for 0, and then Siebert actually went 7 for 7. So fantastic game for him. Impactful players, Jaden Daniels for sure. The way he moved the ball, the way his decisions were making for a rookie, he's looking polished. Brian Robinson Jr. I mean, he carried the ball, had over 100 yards. I mean, kudos to him. Devin Singletary, he also did his thing. He definitely was doing a good job for the Giants. Solid run game. Malik Neighbors, the rookie, I think he had a great, solid game. 10 receptions for 127 yards is nice. And Siebert, really the guy I think that at the end of the day did win the game for Washington. 7 for 7 is insane in a game. So, overall, great game. Overall, two outstanding, two outstanding performances in terms of like some upside with the offenses. So overall, yeah, not a bad game. Not a bad game. So Raiders and Ravens. This is 0-1 versus 0-1. Definitely, obviously the advantage was Baltimore. They're in Baltimore. Um, the Ravens just seemed like they just had a better team, and completely fumbled the bag here. 26-23, the Raiders beat the Baltimore Ravens after having a comeback. Yeah, honestly, the keys is ugly offenses. They were just really ugly offenses. Flowers did shine though on this game, so give him his flowers. Baltimore, they shied away from running. Definitely didn't utilize the running game, especially a guy that they signed in Derrick Henry, which they needed to feed him the ball. Did not as effectively as they should have. Um, and in terms of numbers wise, it wasn't terrible, but he could have had 100 plus rushing yards. Like you get Derrick Henry 100 plus rushing yards, I feel like this team can win games. Um, yeah, it's just another choking of Baltimore, um, just giving the game away. Honestly, this Baltimore defense is very very susceptible um, to big plays being happened, and that's tough because they were the best defense in the league last year, and they fumbled the bag. They're going through a transition. Definitely losing guys like Pat Queen and whatnot, Geno Stone. It seems like it's taking a little bit of a toll though. So offensive wise, Minshew 30 for 38, 276 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Got sacked 5 times though. Lamar Jackson 21 for 34, 247 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Wasn't impressive at all. Derrick Henry 18 rushes for 84 yards and a touchdown. Um, Devontae Adams had a good game, 9 receptions for 110 yards and a touchdown. Brock Bowers had 9 receptions for 98 yards. Zay Flowers had 7 receptions for 91 yards and a touchdown. Defensive wise, Max Crosby came to play, 6 tackles, 2 sacks, 4 tackles for loss, and a pass deflection. Spillane, 11 tackles, 1 interception, and 2 pass deflections. For the Ravens, Van Noy, 3 tackles, 2 sacks, 3 tackles for loss. Oweh, 5 tackles, 2.5 sacks, 2 tackles for loss. Humphrey, 10 tackles, 1 interception, 1 tackle for loss, and 1 pass deflection. And Roquan Smith with 11 tackles and a pass deflection. Kicking wise, Carlson was 4 for 4. Tucker was 3 for 4. Impact players, it was definitely Devontae Adams and Brock Bowers. That offensive game that's not great for Las Vegas ran through those two guys. Gardner Minshew, I think he had a good game. Besides, he got sacked 5 times, but the numbers he put are fantastic. Max Crosby came to ball out, so he's impactful. Marlon Humphrey, he did have a good game. And Daniel Carlson, Mr. Automatic, he did a great job. So overall, kudos to Las Vegas going into Baltimore, getting a win, and shame on the Ravens for letting it slip and needing and should have won the game. Okay, Saints and Cowboys. This was a week 2 game between the 1-0 Saints, 1-0 Cowboys in Dallas. I was honestly expecting a either a closer game or a Dallas win. I did not expect what I saw. 44-19 smacking by the Saints. Alvin Kamara was a monster. He did a lot of things great. Pass run, everything. Definitely seeing the old AK, and that's nice to see that. Pure New Orleans domination and destruction in Jerry World there in Dallas. So overall, I mean, New Orleans could do no wrong, and Dallas could do no right. At the end of the day, Derek Carr impressed a lot, and he was flying high. Overall, this was a game of just, like I said, pure domination. You look at the stats. You got Derek Carr, who went 11 for 16 with 243 yards, two touchdowns and a pick. Dak Prescott, 27 for 39 with 293 yards, one touchdown and two interceptions. It was not great for him. Alvin Kamara, 20 rushes, 115 yards, three touchdowns, two receptions for 65 yards and a touchdown. Rashid Shaheed, four receptions for 96 yards and a touchdown. CeeDee Lamb, four receptions for 90 yards and a touchdown. Defensive wise, they had Tyrann Mathieu with three tackles, an interception, and two pass deflections. Carl Granderson with five tackles, 1.5 sack, and a tackle for loss. McKinstry with five tackles, one tackle for loss, and a pass deflection. And Paulson Adebo, five tackles, one interception, and two pass deflections. On the Cowboys side, they did have Golston, who had four tackles, a sack, and a tackle for loss, as well as Wilson with six tackles, one interception, and one pass deflection. Overall, Group A had 1 for 1. Brandon Aubrey 4 for 4. Impact player, it was Derek Carr who was efficient. Again, only incompleting five passes is nice. Kamara, I mean, enough said. What he was able to do on the ground game and the pass game was insane, and a huge game, a huge win for him due to Alvin's performance, and the defense in New Orleans would shut down Dak, and I felt like could have been a offense that put up more than 19 points. So kudos to them overall. Dallas going back to the drawing board. And yeah, I mean, New Orleans showing something in here early on in the season there. We're looking at the Bucks and the Lions game, week two. Both coming in 1-0. Definitely the Bucks shocked a lot of people with this win, 20-16 in Detroit. Overall, I mean, not a bad game. Definitely could see that it was revenge for Tampa after the last year's divisional round, and not saying Detroit's in any trouble. Just they just could not seem to score healthy amount of points that they usually are accustomed to. So um, overall, these takeaways was tough defenses. Both defenses came to play. They both are scrappy. They both were fighting through everything and making sure that these teams were not just scoring at a huge rate there. The run game was strong. Baker played smart football, as he always does. So far, he's been playing smart football. Um, the turnovers from Jared Goff was a huge issue. I think that's really the biggest takeaways. I think Goff with his turnovers, if he did not do that, I feel like it would have been a different story. Um, that would have meant a win for Detroit. I feel like I just feel like they're just more talent. They have more talent on their team. Offensive wise, Baker Mayfield 12 for 19, 185 yards, one touchdown, one interception, sacked five times. He had five rushes for 34 yards and a touchdown. Jared Goff 34 for 55 with 307 yards, zero touchdowns, two picks. You did have Jamar Gibbs with 13 rushes for 84 yards. Chris Godwin had seven receptions for 117 yards and a touchdown. St. Brown, 11 receptions for 119 yards. I think that was insane and incredible. Defensive wise, McCollum, the secondary there, the Bucks, six tackles, one interception, four pass deflections. Ezian, 10 tackles, one interception, two pass deflections, and Jordan Whitehead, 11 tackles, one tackle for loss, one pass deflection. On the other side, Aiden Hutchinson, really, I mean, he had a great game. Five tackles, 4.5 sacks, and a four tackles for loss. And then Brian Branch, six tackles, an interception, and two pass deflections. McLaughlin was 2 for 2. Bates was 3 for 3. Impact wise, I mean, Chris Godwin for sure with the pass attack. Didn't definitely didn't shy away from his yardage there. St. Brown, I mean, he was pretty much the one that kept him in the game, regardless of the turnovers. So St. Brown's got to get some recognition. McCollum, great game for him in the secondary, and Aiden Hutchinson had a great game at the DN position, almost unblockable, making plays at a great, enormous rate. So those are the guys that are impactful. This was a good game. I could see them play again in the playoffs this year, definitely. So Colts and the Packers. When you look at the Colts and the Packers, man, you're just looking at a really, really good competitive game. Really, I mean, the Colts definitely Couldn't get any offense going, but at the same time, like Green Bay also wasn't scoring much. Like this was a really good battle, and I mean, obviously Jordan Love's injury definitely I feel like took a toll on that offense. So, whether you see it or not, I think the Colts did impress for sure. Takeaways, I mean, Green Bay won the game 16-10. They were both 0-1. So Malik Willis impressed as Jordan Love's fill-in spot right now for his injury. Malik Willis was not bad. He wasn't like he had great numbers, like in terms of superstar, but he had the numbers he needed to get to move the ball. So he needs the credit there. Green Bay did move the ball well. I think Jacobs was he was a huge workhorse for this team. So really it was a grinding game. I think Josh Jacobs was able to make it known that I am Josh Jacobs. I'm not just a bum. I'm not gonna have a down year. Obviously, his goal is not to have a down year. He definitely was a huge contributor to the win. Um, yeah, it just the Colts. They didn't let him score that many points. It just didn't seem like they played with urgency until the fourth quarter, when it was a little bit too little, too late. I felt like they should have had that intensity, and I think they could have won this game. Offensive wise, Richardson 17 for 34, 204 yards, one touchdown, three picks. That was ugly. Malik Willis 12 for 14, 122 yards, one touchdown, zero picks, six rushes for 41 yards. Jonathan Taylor 12 rushes for 103 yards, two receptions for 32 yards. Josh Jacobs 32 carries for 151 yards, not bad. Defensive wise, I mean, for the for the Colts, Cross 15 tackles, Speed 12 tackles, Franklin 10 tackles. Green Bay, they had Wyatt with two tackles, a sack, and two tackles for loss. Xavier McKinney, who was a huge pickup for him, he had four tackles, an interception, a tackle for loss, and a pass deflection. Yeah, I mean, Matt Gay was one for two, Narvison three for four. Um, yeah, when you look at the impact, I mean, Josh Jacobs was a huge impact player because of the numbers. They ran the ball, man. They ran the ball. Malik Willis didn't have a huge game, but I mean, you got to give him some credit for what he was able to do on the field, and being a good game manager. Um, and other than that, I mean, Xavier McKinney and the Green Bay defense, I think, played spectacular. Indianapolis Colts defense played spectacular. Impactful wise, Xavier McKinney for sure. Just what he was able to do on the field was great. So overall, yeah, it was a good game. Definitely, like I said, low scoring. Could have been boring for some people, but not bad. Not bad at all. Next, Jets Titans 0-1 battle. Obviously the Jets are trying to get to a place where they can win. Obviously they got Aaron Rodgers healthy. He's aging. Like they need a playoff push for sure. Obviously, like they would like to get to that stage. They have the talent to do that. So it's not like they are, bad in any sense. It's just the chemistry. They need to get the chemistry up. And from there on out, comes to winning and comes to success. Tennessee is one of those teams that, you know, is Will Levis the guy. So, honestly, takeaways from this game: Jets won 24-17 to Tennessee. It was a pretty good game, honestly. It was pretty close. It could have gone either way. Tennessee had a chance to win this game, blew it. Will Levis, definitely to not be so rude, but he's playing like a wannabe Mahomes. He's trying to do these trick plays that just don't help him. You just got to throw the football. Just throw the football, do the little simple things. It may be boring, but it's going to get it done. So I think he's trying too hard there. Um, Unfortunately, a turnover magnet, which is bad for him. But want to see him turn it around. Running backs, um, yeah, running backs as receivers. That was a pretty critical thing of the game. Definitely used Pollard and Hall in a lot of their schemes and a lot of their offense. So good on the running backs on their impact on the game. Defense, they get it done. Jets defense gets it done. They get the win. They do what they need to do. Come out, beat them in Tennessee. Rodgers, looking at the stats: 18 for 30, 176 yards, two touchdowns, no picks. Levis, 19 for 28, 192 yards, one touchdown, one interception, four rushes for 38 yards. Running back wise, Brees Hall, 14 carries for 62 yards, seven receptions, 52 yards, and a touchdown. Pollard, 17 rushes for 62 yards, five receptions for 40 yards. Ridley also had a really good game, 4 receptions for 77 yards and a touchdown. Defensive wise, there's a lot of them. The Jets had Solomon Thomas, who had 3 tackles, 1 sack, 1 tackle for loss, 1 pass deflection. Will McDonald the fourth, 4 tackles, 3 sacks, 3 tackles for loss. Eccles, 5 tackles, 1 interception, 1 pass deflection. Quincy Williams, 10 tackles, a fumble recovery, and Sherwood, who had 12 tackles, a tackle for loss, and a pass deflection. Landry the third in the Tennessee Titans defense, 3 tackles, 2 sacks, 2 tackles for loss, and 2 pass deflections. And Jones the fourth with 9 tackles and 2 tackles for loss. Kickers both Zerline and Folk had 1 for 1. Impact players, you got to go with Brees Hall. He's a huge reason why they were able to move the ball so efficiently, why they got these touchdowns, obviously, getting him the win. McDonald the fourth needs his props. 3 sacks is fantastic. 3 tackles for loss is great. 4 tackles is great. So he had a huge stamp. Solomon Thomas did a little bit of everything. That's what you want. And Harold Landry the third for the Titans. Got to look for him. Got to make sure you know where he's at all times. The fact that he had 2 sacks, 2 tackles for loss, 2 pass deflections is crazy. Definitely a key contributor to making this game close. So overall, it was a good game. Definitely worth watching it. But Tennessee could have had this game. Viking game was in Minnesota. Both battles of 1-0s. Definitely a very big surprise with how well this game turned out to be. Thinking it from the aspect of the Niners just had more talent, just a better. It's just a better team. They've been in the Super Bowl last year, and the Vikings. Well, Sam Darnold isn't known widely known as a superstar QB. So this was very surprising, but also super cool to see that Minnesota was playing the Niners hard. Um, Vikings won 23-17 to the Niners. Sam Darnold's success has continued throughout 2 weeks, so it's been great to see that. Vikings defense have been aggressive. Definitely been really, really fun to watch. 49ers, I think they'll be okay at the end. They just got some injury bugs, and they'll solve that as they go. Brock Purdy had 28 for 36 with 319 yards, 1 touchdown and 1 interception. Got sacked 6 times though. Darnold 17 for 26 with 268 yards, 2 touchdowns and an interception. For the running game, Jordan Mason 20 rushes for 100 yards and a touchdown. Deebo Samuel and George Kittle. Deebo Samuel had 8 receptions for 110 yards. Kittle 7 receptions for 76 yards and a touchdown. On the other side, you had Justin Jefferson with 4 receptions for 43 yards and a touchdown. Naylor with 3 receptions for 54 yards and a touchdown. Defensive wise, you're looking at the Niners. You got Givens had 2 tackles, a sack, and a tackle for loss. Joey Bosa had 5 tackles, 2 sacks, 2 tackles for loss, and Fred Warner had 9 tackles, 1 sack, 1 interception, 1 tackle for loss, 2 pass deflections. The Vikings, Van Ginkel had 4 tackles, a sack, 2 tackles for loss, and a pass deflection. Jones the second had 5 tackles, 2 sacks, 2 tackles for loss. Metellus with 7 tackles, an interception, a tackle for loss, and a pass deflection. And Blake Cashman with 13 tackles, a sack, a tackle for loss, and 3 pass deflections. Kicking wise, Mooney was 1 for 1. Richard was 3 for 3. Impact wise, Sam Darnold for sure with all of his, um, you know, pretty much mistake-free football. 1 interception, but this man was moving the ball and leading the Vikings towards, their home victory there. Receivers, I mean, on both sides were fantastic. They got their grabs, they got their catches, they got their yards. A lot of touchdowns there today, definitely. Fred Warner, you got to give him some credit. He was doing absolutely everything right and was all over the field. Definitely was a reason why San Fran was in the game, dude. And then Van Ginkel, another guy that was super impactful for the Vikings defense. Definitely a vital piece for them winning this game. So overall, though, good game. Vikings, they were ready. They were not afraid of the Niners. All right, so the Panthers and Chargers game. This was a super boring game. If you're a Panthers fan, NFL fan in general, just seeing the annihilation of Carolina. Yeah, Chargers 1-0, Panthers 0-1. Chargers easily beat them 26-3. It just was not a contest all game. Chargers bolt up. Chargers were, um, you know, I know it was an easier win for them, but they made a statement by winning this game. that um, they are doing their best to try to go put their best foot forward, try to win some games this year, maybe get a playoff game. Justin Herbert definitely needs that on his resume. Bryce Young, looked really, really bad this game, and it's coming down to, is he a bust? Or is it just because he's in a really bad organization that he hasn't had the chance to really become the star that he needs to be? It's wishy washy with it, but there are question marks with him being a bust. Yeah, the Panthers are just bad. They're a bad team. They don't have the right personnel, right coaching. Their investment in players is minuscule. So, I mean, overall, this is not a great team. Offensive wise, Herbert 14 for 20, 130 yards, two touchdowns and a pick. Bryce Young 18 for 26, only 84 passing yards, zero touchdowns, one pick. J.K. Dobbins had 17 rushes for 131 yards and a touchdown. He was amazing. Johnston had 5 receptions, 51 yards for 2 touchdowns. Defense, he had Joey Bosa with 2 tackles, a sack, and a tackle for loss. Molden with 7 tackles, 1 interception, 1 pass deflection. And Perriman with 8 tackles, a sack, and a tackle for loss. J.C. Horn had 6 tackles and 2 pass deflections. Josie Jewell, 11 tackles and a fumble recovery. And Shaq Thompson, 14 tackles. So good on him. Kickers, you got Cameron Dicker with 2 for 2, and Pinheiro went 1 for 1. The impact, honestly, from this game was is going to be Johnston. Quinn Johnston had a great game with the 2 touchdowns. Was a threat this game for sure. Perriman for sure was big for them, as well as Molden, and then J.K. Dobbins with a stellar performance for them. Run game was on point. So yeah, those are some great key players. And yeah, this game was very, very boring. Browns and Jaguars. Um, got Browns and Jaguars 0-1 teams playing in Jacksonville. Definitely was picturing Jacksonville winning this game. Cleveland went in there. They did their job. Pretty much it was mainly a defensive battle this game, but Browns won 18-13. Offensive spurts. Definitely had offensive spurts from both teams. They definitely were able to move the ball at a pretty efficient rate, and that was at moments. Defensive battle all the way for both teams. They really did play really well for both of them. Um, Lawrence really tried for that win, that trying to do a game-winning drive esque scenario. It did not work out for him. Um, and it happens. Some of those times it just happens. It's just bad that it happened at home, and the Browns got him. So offensive wise, Deshaun Watson 22 for 34, 186 yards, 5 rushes, 20 yards for a touchdown. Lawrence 14 for 30 with 220 yards, no touchdown, no interception, nothing. Jerome Ford had 7 rushes for 64 yards. ETN had 13 rushes for 52 yards and a touchdown. Receiving wise, very, very surprising. Jerry Jeudy, 5 receptions, 73 yards, was the impact receiver there. At defensive wise, you had Jordan Hicks with 3 tackles, a sack, a tackle for loss, and 2 pass deflections. You had Garrett with 3 tackles, a sack, a tackle for loss. Wright had 3 tackles, a sack, and a tackle for loss. And JOK with 7 tackles and 2 tackles for loss. For the Jacksonville Jaguars, Josh Hines Allen with 4 tackles, 1 sack, 1 tackle for loss, 1 pass deflection. Ula Khan, 8 tackles, 1 sack, 1 tackle for loss. And Brown with 11 tackles and 2 tackles for loss. Kicking wise, Hopkins was 3 for 3. Little was 2 for 3. Impact guys, Cleveland defense for sure, because they shut down Jacksonville. Only let them score 13 points. It's crazy. Josh Allen had a great game. Jerry Jeudy came in and had a great game for his, in terms of his career. Definitely had his best. And then Deshaun Watson, just for being a game manager kind of guy, was able to play smart football. So those are the guys. Definitely it was an okay game. It was kind of boring, but Cleveland did their job. The next game, we got the Rams and the Cardinals coming from Glendale. 0-1 teams coming in, and one team was battered and bruised, which was the Rams, and one team was just trying to look for some wins, and that was the Cardinals. And they did just that. The Cardinals dominated the Rams 41-10. Just wasn't close all game. Um, yeah, injuries again. They affected the Rams, and that's kind of a big storyline. Their offensive line was beat up. The wide receivers were beat up. It wasn't a great look. They weren't prepared at all because they didn't have the key pieces that they needed. Um, Welcome Marvin Harrison Jr. He definitely had a great game this year or this game overall. I mean, it's good to see him be effective, especially because he got drafted so high. So it kind of gave him a little NFL welcome with a really great game. Snot pounding. It was a snot pounding. It was just the Cardinals going all over the Rams defense, driving through them, and shutting down the Rams offense at the same time. And Kyler just being in control. I mean, you like to see that. I know Kyler Murray's had their ups and downs, more downs this past recently. But I mean, he had a great game. Looking at the offense, Stafford went 19 for 27 with 216 yards. No touchdowns, no picks, nothing like that. He got sacked 5 times though. Kyler, he went 17 for 21 with 266 yards, 3 touchdowns, and no picks. James Conner, 21 rushes, 122 yards for a touchdown. Marvin Harrison Jr., 4 receptions, 130 yards for 2 touchdowns. Defensive wise, Quentin Lake with 11 tackles. Jared Verse, 7 tackles and 3 tackles for loss. And Turner, 3 tackles, 1 sack, 1 tackle for loss. On the Cardinals side, you did have Buda Baker with 8 tackles, 2 tackles for loss, and a pass deflection. Gardick, he had a great game. 6 tackles, 3 sacks, 4 tackles for loss. Barnes, 4 tackles, a sack, and a tackle for loss. And Collins with 2 tackles, 1 sack, and 1 tackle for loss. Kicker wise, you got Cardi 1 for 1, Prater 2 for 2. Impact player Kyler because of his able to be managing of a game and just leading his troops. James Conner because of his ability of getting 100 plus rushing yards and just dominating that Rams front line. Marvin Harrison Jr. because he had a great second game to his rookie campaign. Buda Baker, I mean, he was all over the field, really big, impactful guy, captain of the team. And Gardick, because 3 sacks and 4 tackles for loss is a great game. He balled out, played his ass off. Overall, I mean, this is all what you need and what you expect from a Cardinals fan base. It's just this is the good Cardinals team that you want to see. So, yeah, I mean, smacking. Cardinals definitely smacked them. Okay, so we got the Steelers and the Broncos for the next game. Honestly, 13-6 was the final score. Pittsburgh was 1-0. Denver was on 1. Pittsburgh managed to win this game in Denver. Um, yeah, I mean, pretty boring. Honestly, pretty boring. Offense performances. The defense, I mean, they were definitely aggressive. They were definitely attacking. Steelers defense is super real. Offense wise, Fields 13 for 20, 117 yards, a touchdown, and 0 picks. Nix was 20 for 35 with 246 yards, 0 touchdowns, and 2 picks. Reynolds, 4 receptions for 93 yards. On defense, TJ Watt had a game, 3 tackles, 1 sack, 2 tackles for loss, and a pass deflection. Highsmith with 4 tackles, a sack, and 2 tackles for loss. And Deshaun Elliott with 9 tackles and a tackle for loss. On the other side, Allen had 4 tackles, a sack, and a tackle for loss. Ellis with 4 tackles, a sack, and 2 tackles for loss. And Singleton with 12 tackles. Kicking wise, Boswell went 2 for 2, Lutz went 2 for 2. Impact guys was the 2 defensive ends there, or edge rushers. T.J. Watt had a great game. Zach Allen had a great game. Um, Justin Fields didn't look terrible, but again, there just was no offense in this game, and it was boring. It was boring, but defense. If you love defense, this was the game for you. So we're looking at the Bengals and Chiefs game. It's always a really good game between these two guys, between these two teams, especially between Burrow and Mahomes. We've definitely gotten a really good sense of two of the best going at each other head to heads, and I know Mahomes has definitely beat him a lot more than Burrow, but Burrow always does show up for these big games. Bengals had some great drives in this game. Um, Cam Taylor Britt interception was spectacular. That could be one of the plays of the year. That one-handed grab was nasty. The Bengals, honestly, the discipline cost them the game. At the end of the game, you call it what you want with the field goal, with the flag and whatnot. A lot of people were mad about it. It just really came down to the discipline. Bengals lacked that. Offensive wise, Burrow with 23 for 36 with 258 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks. Mahomes 18 for 25 with 151 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks. Pacheco 19 rushes, 90 yards. Gasecki, 7 receptions for 91 yards. Rice, 5 receptions for 75 yards and a touchdown. Defensive wise, Trey Hendrickson with 4 tackles, 2 sacks, 2 tackles for loss. Pratt with 16 tackles, a fumble recovery, and Wilson with 12 tackles. On the other side, Karloftis with 3 tackles, 1 sack, 1 tackle for loss. Dana with 4 tackles, a half a sack, and a tackle for loss. Connor with 6 tackles, 1 fumble recovery, 1 sack, 1 tackle for loss. And Nick Bolton with 7 tackles, 1 tackle for loss, 1 pass deflection. Kicking wise, McPherson 4 for 4, Butker 2 for 2. Impact wise, honestly, Burrow came to play. Rasheed Rice, he also did come to play, and he was a huge savior for the Chiefs' offense. Connor, the defensive back from the Chiefs, definitely came to play, definitely disrupting a lot. Hendrickson balled out, and I mean the combination of Pratt and Wilson was really good with their combined of 28 tackles. So, I mean, that's pretty great. Overall, this was a really entertaining game. Just came down to who was the better team. This Sunday, it was the Chiefs. The Sunday night game between the 1 and 0 teams, Caleb Williams versus CJ Stroud. I think a lot of people were looking forward to it. The Houston Texans were able to win this game 19-13, scrapping it. It was a great first half battle in terms of just overall teams just kind of duking it out and trying to make the most out of their possessions and stops. But overall, it was a great first half offensive battle. Defensive wise, took over second half. They both were doing a good job to try to shut down each other team. Caleb just couldn't finish on the final drive. He's a rookie. He's going to learn, but it's a CJ Stroud game, so he did what he could. Offensive wise, Caleb Williams 23 for 37, 174 yards, 0 touchdowns, 2 picks. 5 rushes for 44 yards, got sacked 7 times. CJ Stroud, 23 for 36, 260 yards with 1 touchdown and no pick. Collins with 8 receptions, 135 yards and a touchdown. Defensive wise, Sanborn, 2 tackles, 1 sack, 1 tackle for loss, 1 pass deflection. Gordon, 6 tackles, 1 tackle for loss, 1 pass deflection. Byard, 11 tackles, 1 fumble recovery, 1 tackle for loss. And Edmonds, 11 tackles, 1 sack, 1 tackle for loss. On the Houston Texans side, Will Anderson Jr. with 4 tackles, 1.5 sack, 2 tackles for loss. Lassiter, 4 tackles, 1 interception, 1 pass deflection. Daniil Hunter, 5 tackles, 1.5 sack, 2 tackles for loss. Al Shair, 10 tackles, 1 sack, 1 tackle for loss. Pitre, 10 tackles and 1 tackle for loss. Tohoto, 13 tackles, 1 sack, 1 tackle for loss. Kicking wise, Santos 2 for 2. Fairbairn 4 for 4. Impact players, Collins, Nico Collins, both defenses because they were balling. Both had great stats. And Fairbairn, who definitely was a key contributor to Houston winning this Sunday night clash. Week two, you had a Falcons Eagles game, but most importantly, a week two matchup, which had to be Kirk Cousins against Philly. It's always funny how they always match him up with Philly in a week two matchup. And, again, new faces and new places with him in Atlanta. This is a good game. 0-1 Falcons, 1-0 Eagles. Long story short, Falcons won 22-21 in a really good finish. Atlanta's rush definitely a success in this game, able to run all over Philly's run defense. Saquon definitely a pivotal key pass drop where they could have definitely made it. They could have gained some yards up in there. So having them that pivotal drop was huge. I believe it was in the red zone as well. So again, that hurt him a lot, which in turn made it Kirk magic. Kirk Cousins drove down the field, ended the Eagles by making sure Atlanta was going to win the game. So Kirk Cousins, not Thursday night, so he delivered on Monday night. He's never really had much success on prime time like that, so it's nice to see this guy evolutionize, especially with a really good team. Offensive wise, Kirk Cousins 20 for 29, 241 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks. Jalen Hurts 23 for 30, 183 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, 13 rushes for 85 yards and a touchdown. Bijan 14 rushes for 97 yards. Saquon with 22 rushes for 95 yards. Darnell Mooney with 3 receptions for 88 yards and a touchdown. And Devontae Smith 7 receptions, 76 yards and a touchdown. Defense wise, Judon had 6 tackles, a sack, and 2 tackles for loss. Ellis with 11 tackles. Jesse Bates the third, 12 tackles, 1 interception, 1 tackle for loss, 2 pass deflections. On the Eagles side, Blankenship had 10 tackles, and Zach Bond had 9 tackles. Kicking wise, Youngwei Koo, 3 for 3. Elliott, 2 for 2. Impact wise, Kirk Cousins drove him down the field, did what he had to do, became a leader there. Devontae Smith had a really good game. And you got to look at the Jesse Bates the third, man. He was balling and all over the field this game. So, great game, great finish to week 2.